Snapchat stories for businesses. And so we come to Snapchat, which in many ways is the black sheep of this group. Snapchat is the one that started it all, of course, but it's also the one that in some ways is the most limiting for marketers. That's because Snapchat doesn't have a live feed or page where permanent content can be placed. It also lacks some of the advanced tools that other platforms benefit from. Another issue with Snapchat, and one that doesn't get raised often, is that it is actually not programmed all that well. The app takes up more space than it should, uses more memory, and doesn't have the most intuitive interface. But it remains popular. In fact, it is still the fifth most popular social network of all and has 330 plus million users every month. Consider, too, that the entire experience is built around stories in this case. So, if you're going to be creating stories to share on Facebook and Instagram, then you might as well post the same ones here as well. A quick primer. To bring you back up to speed, Snapchat is a site that lets you create short-term messages that can be sent to specific users, as well as stories that work just like they do in the previous two examples. When a user posts to their story, the image or video will again be viewed at the top of the app, this time on the Discover page. The stories are available to be viewed for 24 hours before they self-destruct. You can see stories from friends as well as stories from accounts that you subscribe to. This is what we're going to be targeting with our marketing. The demographic for Snapchat skews very young, which may or may not be a good market for your brand, something to consider when deciding how to divide your time. The good news is that the average user opens the app 25 times a day, and the reason likely has to do a lot with a powerful urge that we can tap into as marketers, FOMO, that is, fear of missing out. Posting content. When you enter the app, you'll see there are four main windows. Those are Camera, Discover, Friends, and Snap Map. One thing that is very unique about Snapchat is that the first thing you see is you. The Snapchat app opens up onto the camera, which makes it easy to start posting right away. Swiping across the screen is how you navigate between the different windows. We're interested in the camera window, of course, as this is where you'll create your images. To take a photo, you can simply tap the large circle down on the bottom or hold it for video. We've seen this before at this point. Videos can once again last up to 10 seconds. There's also the option to upload from your gallery, which is always a good option if you want to increase the quality of your content. More on that in just a moment. Filters or lenses. As with the other platforms, you have a lot of interesting options for decorating and augmenting your stories at this point. Most of these will be available after you take the photo, but before you go ahead, you also have the option to apply filters called lenses. Lenses are effectively filters that will add different accessories to your face or alter it in humorous and creative ways. We've seen this feature on Instagram, but it was Snapchat that started it, and in this case, it's Snapchat that does it best. Since the much-vaunted 2.0 update a few years ago, Snapchat filters have become extremely advanced, using full computer vision in order to alter faces in real time in 3D. Lenses like these are fun for users, but can also be handy for influencers. For one, they give you something to share when you might not have anything in particular to say. People will love seeing their favorite content creators goofing around, and it's an easy way to show your lighter side. The other benefit is that these filters will often explode in popularity suddenly, and that way give you a great way to get in on a trending movement. To access these filters, either tap on your face in the photo or use the face icon just next to the capture icon. From here, you can then take a photo or film as normal. Editing content. Next come the different editing options you have available to you once you've taken a photo. These include stickers, which you can apply around the image's decoration. Stickers come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. You'll search through them based on category, and from there you can add them to your post. These are updated all the time and provide a great way to quickly communicate a concept to your viewers, so they're worth exploring. The T icon will allow you to type and edit the font, and the pencil icon will allow you to draw on the photo or video in real time. The scissors icon lets you crop your image in order to create new stickers from it, which is a very handy feature if you use it properly. The stopwatch icon is what allows you to set how long you want your content to be visible to the recipient for. This includes your stories and lets you show a quick glimpse of something or show a longer image that gives the user time to read. Things can get quite nuanced here, depending on how creative you want to get with it. If you are so inclined, you can change the timings of different shots as your viewers swipe through your feed in order to create a more surprising and dynamic experience for them. What's more is that you could quickly tease someone with an image and then follow up with a longer shot. It even allows for a sense of comic timing. Have some fun with it. Adding a call to action. Finally, though, The most useful option of all is the ability to add links to your posts. This is one area in which Snapchat drastically outperforms Instagram. Whereas Instagram requires users to have 10,000 followers or a verified account before they will be able to use links through the swipe up method, Snapchat lets you add any URL you like right away. This means that you can promote a product right in your Snapchat and then link to it so that people can buy right away. This is an ideal way to convert your Snapchat momentum into sales. Once you've added all these final touches, all that is left to do is to hit the blue send button, the arrow, in the bottom right-hand corner. You'll then be prompted to select if you want to send your story to someone you know or add it to your story. How to create better stories. At this point, you understand the benefit of using stories, and you understand how to use them on the 3 biggest platforms. There are more we haven't looked at yet, YouTube Reels for example, but that covers the big places that you should be spending most of your time and energy. But that brings us to the missing and most important piece of the puzzle, the quality. How do you ensure your stories are good and worth watching for the users? Quality content. Before we get into the technical details, it's first important to consider the very concept of your story. Is this something people want to see? Are you overdoing it? Quantity and regularity are a big consideration for many creators making social media stories. So then just how often should you post and at what time of day? As for quantity, the general advice for social media in general is that you should post once or twice a day. This has been shown by studies to be more effective than posting either more or less regularly. The problem with this, however, is that stories work differently from other posts, and so we can't extrapolate this information. Whereas posts to your main feed risk clogging up users' feeds and becoming irritating, or simply being buried and therefore gaining no benefit, posts to your story will appear at the top of the page and not in a queue. Moreover, while Instagram and Facebook use complex algorithms that favor the individual user in order to determine which posts to show, this is not how stories work. Stories are far more weighted by chronology, meaning in other words that the most recent story is the one that you will be shown first. And that means that you can more easily get seen if you post more regularly. This way, you'll be the first story presented when more people open up their phones, in turn meaning that you'll get more eyeballs on your content. Don't go crazy, but there's no reason not to post 10 times in a row if the idea you're trying to get across benefits from it. Don't do this all the time though, or your viewers might still judge you. As for timing, the best time to post is just when people will be getting home from work. That means roughly 6 p.m. in your local area, but you'll need to be strategic to target the most countries possible if you have an international brand. What to post about? This is the other big question to ask yourself when posting stories. What is this about? Is it well suited to the format? Should you be posting it at all? Anything can be a story. You can post an image of a product and call that a story. Generally, though, this will simply beg the question, why wasn't that a regular post? Users want to see you use stories to post about things that are happening now. This is why they're so often used to post about concerts, travel, meetings, seminars, and similar events. But this is also what makes them a great fit for product launches, special deals, competitions, shoutouts, polls, and clips of other things that you might be doing. Going on a business meeting somewhere interesting? Why not bring your followers via stories? Just created a new post for your blog? Stories. Stories also work extremely well for news sites. For instance, if you have a tech channel and a big company releases a new smartphone or computer, then you can write about it on the blog and then immediately share that post as news to your stories. If you find yourself struggling to come up with ideas for stories, then consider creating a kind of recurring theme or even a series. A good example was when actor Chris Pratt used stories to share what he was eating every day on his diet. They were funny, short, and a great insight into his life at the time. They also had the added bonus of showing a bit more of his life through things happening in the background or other stars in the videos. Higher quality. Your stories don't need to be extremely high quality. In fact, that is often considered to be one of their biggest benefits, that they can be made quickly and don't need to be works of art. With that said, though, creators like Peter McKinnon are showing everyone else up by showing just how attractive and professional they can be. So, depending on the nature of your brand, you might choose to stand out with a highly polished and beautiful story. At the very least, learning some basics when it comes to photography, editing, framing, and more can help to elevate the level of your stories and all the rest of your content for that matter. Taking better photos. Equipment. The first thing you should do is to equip yourself. If you hope to take the best pictures that will look professional on your account, then you should have a camera that will be able to take high-definition images, and you should have editing software so that you can add that extra bit of professional polish. You're probably used to taking photos for Instagram and Snapchat on your phone, and that, of course, is something you can still do. To take high-quality photos, you just need a phone with a good sensor, high megapixel count, and respectable post-processing. Good options include mostly anything by Apple or Samsung, the Pixel phones, Nokia phones, etc. But you also have the option to take photos from your gallery, which you might have added via an SD card or Wi-Fi transfer. This is how you can take photos with a professional DSLR or mirrorless camera, and you will see the difference. This is especially true if you shoot in RAW with a flat color profile and then do a little editing as well. This means that the camera will minimize post-processing, providing more information from the original image to play with. That in turn means you can really create that dynamic HD-looking contrast and crush those blacks, get the colors to pop. Being ready. If you run a business with a social account, then you should be constantly ready to capture images when the opportunities present themselves. For instance, when I sold my old car in cash not long ago, I took the opportunity to photograph the money in a range of scenarios ready for potential use on my money-making channel. Likewise, you might find when you're on a walk that you see a great cityscape which could be used in a range of generic motivational posts. Make sure you have your camera on you at all times and that you are actively looking out for great photo ops so that you can create a great resource to draw on in the future. This is another thing to consider. The photos don't need to be posted as soon as they're taken. You can post photos from months ago or even post photos and videos from stock video or photography sites. This lets you create more content more affordably. Framing and depth. While you aren't going to become a pro overnight, taking great shots is often simply a matter of taking the time to consciously set up the image rather than just pointing and shooting head-on. Think, for instance, about your foreground and background image elements, and about whether having a leaf in the foreground could help to create more of a sense of three-dimensional depth. Meanwhile, look for things like paths and lines that can draw the eye in, and think about elements that can frame the action. You don't necessarily need professional lighting equipment meanwhile, but thinking about the angle you take the shot in relationship to the natural light sources can make a big difference in just a few seconds. Just take a bit more time and think about your composition, as well as your subject, and your photography will improve greatly. All these things are things you can learn with time, but if you make an effort to up your game, you'll see the responses becoming more popular too. Advanced technique in selling. There are many more advanced techniques and strategies that we have yet to cover. In this video, we'll take a look at some of them, as well as how you can leverage the most powerful in order to drive far more direct sales. Mini slideshows. One of the great things about stories is the way that they naturally stitch together and play in sequence. This means that if you are thoughtful about which of your images you post in which order, you can turn your content into kind of a slideshow or video. This is a particularly popular way to promote articles, for instance. Here, each story might consist of a caption from your article or a key point that has a kind of cliffhanger and picture as a backdrop. The user would keep tapping through the stories to keep hearing more and to be guided through the narrative. It's an excellent strategy for engagement and for driving more people to an article. Instagram albums. One relatively new feature from Instagram is the ability to save photos from your stories onto your regular post grid as albums. Once you've saved a story or you decide you want to post it normally, you'll be able to select up to 10 of those images and videos and then post them as an album. This is a way to contain a whole story in a single node, perhaps an experience such as a trip abroad or a concert. This has the appeal of letting you turn your hard work into something more permanent and concrete. And of course, there is potential marketing value from these albums that extends beyond the life of a single post. Some say it cheapens the concept, but seeing as it's an optional feature, it's hard to argue with it. Selling. The main objective of any form of marketing is, of course, to sell, and converting that hard work into sales can sometimes be difficult, especially owing to some of the limitations of the platform. For example, Instagram does not allow you to include the swipe up to buy option through stories unless you have enough followers. You can opt to use Snapchat instead, as that does include a link, but that reaches a much smaller audience and a younger demographic. So instead, another option is to create a poll. The great thing about polls is that it allows you to see who answered and what they said. This means that you can contact individual users based on their answers. One way to use this is to run a poll asking people their opinion on whether your audience would be interested in X new product from you. When you get the responses, you can then contact each of those now qualified leads directly, knowing that there's a high chance they will convert to sales. Another strategy is to use the tried and tested link in bio option. Here, you simply include a link to your online story in your Instagram bio and then promote it from within the content. The rest of your strategy. While stories are immensely powerful and have huge potential for marketers, they unfortunately do not work in a vacuum. And more specifically, that is to say that stories on their own are not enough to make a huge impact. That's because a story is only one small part of a much larger social media marketing strategy. And your social media marketing strategy is likewise just one part of a much bigger puzzle that is your internet marketing strategy. In order for stories to work, you need to have that initial following, as well as a good amount of trust and engagement from your audience. This video will quickly go over some of how to go about getting that. Building a following on social media. Have a niche. The first thing you need to do is to ensure that you choose a niche and then stick to it. This is where a lot of people will go wrong, and it's why most general users don't have lots of followers. Think about it logically. Who would you want to follow on Instagram or Facebook? Someone that provides interesting content that appeals to you. If that content is completely random, then you'll find there is no reason to keep coming back. Follow most people, though, and you'll get pictures of their holidays, of their partners, of their pets, and of them doing selfies in the mirror. Unless you know that person, this isn't going to be of much interest to anyone, so choose a topic and stick to it if you want to get followers. Your business is likely to define this topic, so the next challenge is to find a way to take the industry you work in and make that into something interesting and ideally somewhat visual so that you can really sell it from your account. This is where many businesses struggle. If you are a travel writer, then coming up with a great theme for your Instagram account will seem easy. But if you happen to run a business that provides legal consulting, how do you turn that into something people want to follow? The answer is to think about the lifestyle and about the value proposition. In other words, what is it that you are helping people to achieve? As a legal consultant, that will depend on your clientele. If you are marketing to businesses, then that might mean helping people to achieve their dreams and find success. If you are marketing to families, then it might mean helping them to achieve security financially. This then can provide the tone and topic for your photos. Are these images of people doing business, of tips for small companies, or are they images of families and activities for families? Either can work, and from there, the stories will then share a little of your personality and behind the scenes. This is the cherry on top of the cake. Have a strong brand. What's also crucial for your stories, for your social media marketing, and for your marketing as a whole, is to set out with a strong brand. Remember, the big advantage of stories is to let people get to know you more as a brand, to let them feel closer to you and to build trust and engagement. This works a lot more effectively if the brand is something that people can really get behind. Note here the important distinction between a brand and a logo. A brand is much more than a logo. Your branding starts when you identify your mission statement. What is your business set out to help and how? What are your values? Take a look at the best business accounts on Instagram and you'll see that they all have a clear message and objective. If we go back to the 1,000 true fans concept, you essentially need to be more than just a business in order to establish those real fans. No one is a fan of their heating company, but you get genuinely fans of Apple. The thing is, there's no reason you can't be a fan of a heating company. Not if that company stands for being eco-friendly, being simple for customers, being convenient. Not if that company also does other interesting things and has a stellar social media account. Know your audience. Don't try to cater to everyone, and know what you're here to do. Create a logo that expresses this intent, and hopefully you'll attract the right kind of customer who has the potential for high engagement. This is the kind of customer who will watch your stories and who will become more loyal to your brand each time they do. Take good pictures or write interesting things. What's also, of course, rather important is that you take great pictures. We mentioned that this was somewhat important for stories, but for your general accounts it becomes much more crucial. Even if you choose a topic that interests a lot of people, you're not going to keep your followers very long if all your images are grainy and at awkward angles. As such, then, it's highly important that you also brush up on your photography skills. This is something that you can learn with a little practice and by reading up online. So put the time in to improve your craft and follow the tips from earlier in this training. The same goes for other forms of social media. If you have a Twitter account, then you need to tweet interesting and humorous things. If you have a Facebook page, then make sure that you are sharing interesting content relevant to your audience through it. The big takeaway: offer value. Make sure you are providing a good reason for people to follow you. Too many brands, especially older corporate businesses, will make the mistake of only ever posting about their own services or industry. Again, this is something that they think makes them somehow more professional, and they are often afraid to venture outside of that comfort zone. But think realistically. How likely would you personally be to want to follow an account that only ever posted about how effective its EPOS system is? You need to provide good content to ensure that the next time you post, your followers want to look. And remember, engagement is more important than followers. Be active and consistent. Of course, people are also going to stop following you pretty quickly if you never post, so you also need to make sure that you use the site often if you want to gather some momentum. And better yet, be active in liking other people's photos and posts too, and commenting. That way, people will come to see who like their pictures and you'll bring in lots of new visitors. Try to get into the habit of posting once or twice a day, and where this isn't possible, use automated systems and scheduling apps to keep a steady flow of content to your channel, even in your absence. Tags. Finally, you need to make sure that people can actually find your site in the first place, which is where using the right tags comes into place. Tags work on Instagram just the same way they work on Twitter. You use a hash next to the word that you think people are going to search for, and then that way people can start browsing by theme. This is similar to picking keywords and key phrases in SEO. You need to choose things that people are likely to look for and which the right people are going to look for. This requires you to think about what's always popular, what's currently in vogue, and also what people are likely to search for within your niche. As we've seen, using tags that aren't too popular is an important tip as well, to ensure that your content doesn't get drowned out right away. On Instagram in particular, users are allowed to include 30 tags with every post. Our advice? Include all 30. Think of it as 30 free chances to play the lottery. There really is no reason not to take every opportunity. How to put this all into action. So now you know all the basics. You know how to set up your social media accounts for stories. You know how to post them, and you understand the benefits of the medium and why you should be using it. Now what's left is to understand how to put all this into action so that it works together with synergy. How do you integrate your stories into your campaign? An example. Let's take an example of a fitness brand. This fitness brand is the personal brand belonging to a sole trader that runs a blog and that sells personal training online. That seller is now going to use their social media platforms and their stories in order to reach the largest audience possible and engage with them on a deeper level. Start by creating your logo and your brand. Identify your buyer persona, the exact person you're selling to, and your mission statement. Then create a logo and site design that expresses this. Create a blog and post here every 2 days with relatively short 500-word blog posts. These aren't particularly SEO optimized, but aimed rather to work well on social with strong, eye-catching titles. Next, you're going to set up your social accounts. Try to get your company onto as many different platforms as possible and to use your company name and logo on every single one. The objective is to be everywhere and to be as consistent as possible with the image you are putting forward. You will then post to those social accounts regularly, making sure to provide real value as you do. It's these actions that will help you to start to build a following that views you as more than a simple product manufacturer or service provider, but as a brand with a set of ideals and a real mission statement. By doing this groundwork, that's when you can make a real impact with your social media stories. That's when you'll have an army of followers who actually care what you do with your day, who want the inside scoop, and who are excited by your new releases and your Q&As. Post to stories once or twice a day, maybe more if you can, and you'll remain in their notification trays and on their minds. Respond to questions and take the time to interact with your audience. If you can do all that, then thanks to stories and strong branding, you will have an audience that is more highly engaged and involved than 90% of audiences out there. Follow this up with the occasional story that promotes a product or that gauges interest, and you can convert some of those warm leads to buyers. And that is how you employ stories to their fullest. Good luck. It's time to write your own success story.